our guest needs no introduction, but still I must introduce him and also make some good mention of some of the people that they are even more of a fan of him than maybe I am. So I've known him longer than I have known him. So, but just before I start the whole introduction, I just want to say something really, really amazing. So someone who has been on my blog for some years called me up. I was like, or maybe he emailed me and said, "Oh, Michael, it looks like some of the things you were looking forward to long ago, they are happening. You know, so this is a post I wrote in 2013. Then I didn't even have the MVP. I guess then too I was really hoping I would get it, which kind of happened a year after or some 8 months after. But the thing is that just keep watching. These are the books I started with when I started learning Excel. I learned Excel kind of on the job, and so I was writing about how I became good in Excel and what really helped me, the resources that helped me. I wanted to look at the resources. Slaying Excel Dragons, and this is our guest, right? So that's one. Again, this is the book that opened my eyes to VBA. So I really wanted to learn it. I was struggling, and then I bought this book, and still by our special guest, right? And let's see. I still have this one here. If you can see my screen, just like to look upside down because maybe I should turn it this way, or how does one turn something that the camera will show it very well. I still have this book, this Excel Gurus Gone Wild, and what was really very special about it is he saw my message. He kind of made a comment on my blog, and if you see my response, you will know that I wasn't expecting it, right?
That's so funny.
So someone else who also reads my blog called me up and said, Michael, you remember the blog post you made about how many years ago this is? This is over 7 years ago, and it's happening that you are not having him live on your show, on your webinar. And many of you, I don't know how many of us learned Excel 8+ years ago, then you will definitely know the MrExcel.com forum. I know it very well, and more importantly, there's someone in the house who I just must mention him. So, Bill, this is the person I said is even very active on the forum. I don't know if he has gotten the MrExcel MVP before, but he's one of your top members, and he's also here right now. His name is Victor. Victor, you want to say hi to?
Hey, Victor. Victor, that's amazing. 4,066 messages. Very good. Thank you for being part of the board.
You have a lot of fans here, and he's one of our best. He's probably the best Excel person in the entire Nigeria. So I'm always proud to show his accomplishments anyway I get to talk about people here. So our guest needs no introduction, but still I must introduce him. His name is Bill Jelen. He's the founder of Excel.com. There are many other things he does. He also has a YouTube podcast. He does, I think, almost daily, because the last time I checked, it's over 2,000 videos done. So it's amazing. He's written over 80 books. I already have shown you some of his books that I used. And there are many of us who I know. That's why I can see that some people have been so enthusiastic to join today's session, because you've benefited. A lot of us here in Nigeria have benefited from your resources, and it's a very good day for us that you are here, though virtually, but still it's as close to flesh as we can get you right now.
Right. Yeah. No, it's great to be here, and I love the MrExcel board because there's so many people that I meet who say, oh, I was able to get a better job or a promotion at work because of the things that I learned, and it's not me teaching it here. It's people like Victor and people who someone has a solution and they're happy to come out and post it. And I love to see when someone posts a question and, it gets 18 or 20 responses and the answer was given, like response number 4, but someone else comes along and says, whoa, wait, there's a better way or a better way or a better way. And then finally, someone will post something and everyone will agree, oh, wow, that's great. We never thought of that. And so I love that interaction of the community of, they're just people who love to try and solve Excel problems. And for them, it's the challenge of what's the best way. And just what a great community. And Michael, that book that you showed, the Excel Gurus Gone Wild, right? That book, I was in England. I was in London doing a seminar, and a few of the people who posted the board, we all went out to dinner. And one of them, he said a sentence that I never considered. He says, my list of favorite topics at MrExcel would make an entire book. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. So when I got home, I went and looked at the topics that people had marked as a favorite. You can bookmark something and say that's something you want to go back to. And I drew those ideas into that book of Excel MVP Gurus Gone Wild, or Excel Gurus Gone Wild. And those are all just examples of where someone had a problem and someone else who's a member of the community came along and came up with just an amazing solution, a solution that, other people who know Excel really well were still like, that's really cool, and thought enough to mark it as something they would come back to. So it's a great community out there of people who are really, really smart about Excel. And no one has to know everything. Like there's people who know VBA and there's people who know array formulas, and someone will come along and give you an answer to your question. It's amazing.
Yes, it is. And maybe just to start off the conversation, because you've given us the free will to use. You see, you're really flexible, and we should feel free to ask you, questions that we've always wanted to maybe ask you. And so, for me personally, and again for everybody in the audience, you can always unmute, and it's going to be a very interactive session.
Yeah.
It's not wanting us to. It's not going to use the usual style of taking an entire 45 minutes to share something. Is willing to answer whatever questions you have. So for me, one question I've always wanted to ask you is, how did this all start? How did you, have you always known that Excel is going to play this very huge, big role in terms of you focusing on it this much and, doing this much? How did it all start for you?
Yeah, it all started, well, there's probably two things. But the main one, I finished college and I got my first job. And so I'm working at a company, and I'm working in the finance department, running reports using a tool, a reporting package. And the thing is, it didn't work. Like the vice president, my boss would ask for reports that this reporting tool couldn't create. And he's like, oh no, they showed us, the salesman showed me that it could do anything I want to do. And I'm like, well, no, it doesn't do this. So what I found, and they always say that the most important button in any reporting package is export to Excel. I found that I could use that reporting tool to take data out of the mainframe, just bring all the data down to a spreadsheet. And then using a spreadsheet, I would, create a pivot table or automatic subtotals, or data consolidate, all of those tools we were using to try and create the reports that he wanted. So it was, a situation where I had gotten hired at this job and the tools they had weren't good. And so I was forced into using a spreadsheet. Originally it was Lotus 1-2-3, but then later Excel. And so I became really good, really good at Excel. And at the company I worked at, there were probably 300 people there in my town that worked at that office, and then there was a manufacturing plant somewhere else with more people. But in that town, the people who worked in our building, if they had an Excel question, they knew that they could come to me, right? And so, there was always like, oh, go to Bill Jelen. There has to be some way to do this in Excel. And eventually, a friend of mine, a coworker who worked 2 doors down, he says, you should write a book. You know so much about Excel, you should write a book. And so we came up with a plan that every day he would come in and ask me an Excel question. And I'd write that Excel question down on a little sticky note, little yellow sticky notes, and I'd throw it in the drawer. And so, he was supposed to come in every day with a question, but he didn't have a question every day. And after a few months, we opened the drawer and there were only like 3 questions. I said, Kevin, you're not asking enough questions. This is never going to work. And that's when I launched MrExcel, right? I said, hey, send me your Excel questions. And the best Excel questions will end up in a book, right? And it was a way to get more questions than what Kevin could ask, right? And it really worked out. That first 6 months, we didn't have the message board, so everything came into me. And I remember it took a couple of days, but 2 questions that appeared. We ended up in the top 10 of, what was it? It wasn't Alta Vista. It might have been Excite, some early search engine. Put us in the top 10, and people found me and they started sending their Excel questions in. And then each week I'd take the best question and I'd write it up as an article on the site. It wasn't even a blog. They didn't have blogs back then, but every week I'd post a new, the question of the week. And then there were a lot more questions that were coming in, and I would just send the people their answer. And I'm still, I was still working. So I would get up early. I'd get up at 4 in the morning and look at yesterday's questions, answer questions for an hour maybe, and then go into work and work my regular job 2 doors down from Kevin, who wasn't asking enough Excel questions. And that probably went on for another 2 years of me just continuing to work, but kind of at night, part-time, answering questions. And it's funny, I thought I knew everything about Excel when I started the site. I called myself MrExcel, but it wasn't until I started getting questions from all kinds of people in all kinds of different companies that I was forced to really go learn a lot of things. There were a lot of calculation functions that I had never used. Of course, VLOOKUP. I think everyone uses VLOOKUP, but there were some engineering functions. You get questions in, and it's like your first reaction is, I have no idea what he's talking about. But you can go figure it out, right? Read Excel help and try and puzzle it out and send the solution back. And then now you know something about that, right? And so those 2 years of answering Excel questions, not just about what I had to do at work, but what lots of people had to do at their work, that was really valuable in helping to learn just a lot about Excel.
Wow. So there are some 2 people I just want to ask if they have questions for you. Charles, do you have any question for Bill?
Hey, Charles.
Charles, are you okay? Maybe he's muted. Victor, what about you? We really want to hear your voice. Before I move on to the next question, it would be cool to hear you say something. Okay, maybe.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, I would say it's more like, being in the presence of an Excel god. So, Bill, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Victor, it's my pleasure to be in your presence.
I have to be honest, first of all, we've learned a lot from Excel.com. It's an amazing site. You go there, you post a question, and somebody from some part of the world that you don't even know, gives you a solution. So it's really, really good. It's been a blessing.
I remember, Victor, let me interrupt. My very first time that I realized how amazing the MrExcel board was, I was at work and I was trying to solve something. I couldn't solve it. And I went out to my own site. This was in 1999, so 21 years ago. I posted the question and then I went to lunch. Right, so I came back an hour later, and it was a guy named Ivan Moala from New Zealand. Right, this guy from halfway around the world from me had posted the answer, and I said, "This is amazing." Right, here I am facing this problem at work, and someone from halfway around the world knows the answer, and we were able to find each other. He was able to find my question and give me the answer. And I said, this is just an amazing thing. So, Victor, I appreciate you providing so many answers.
I know Ivan Mwala. It's a username I know well on the group.
Right.
So I have a question for you, if I can go ahead.
Sure.
Okay, so there are some things I find maybe a little, let me use the word annoying about Excel, that I feel like Excel should have this, but it doesn't have it.
Right.
For a long time, one of it was on hide multiple sheets.
Yes.
Right. That one was one that used to really annoy me. I was like, this is so simple. Just make a user form, multi-select, and that's all. So I just wanted to ask you, maybe currently, what are some of those pain points for you that you feel like Microsoft, you can just fix this and make life better for everybody?
Yeah, there were so many. And it's funny, when I was working in the finance department, I would have so many things that frustrated me about Excel, but I had no way of communicating those to Microsoft, right? There's no way, how would you ever get a note to the Excel team or something like that? And then when I became an MVP, so now I have access to those people and I can give them suggestions, but I found that those suggestions, like if I go to the Excel team and say, I really think you should do this, they don't listen to me, right? Because they think I'm not representative of the average person using Excel, and what's important to me, they don't think is important to everybody. But what I found is there's an amazing website that the Excel team monitors, that they watch, and it's excel.uservoice.com. And if you put an idea out there on excel.uservoice.com and other people start voting for your idea, to the point where maybe it gets 100 votes or 200 votes, those are the ones that the Excel team will take a look at and see if there's an easy way to solve it. So your example there of unhide multiple worksheets, that started its life as an idea at User Voice. And I've now found that the best way to get something into Excel, and there's lots of things I've gotten into Excel, rather than go try and convince someone in the Excel team, what I'll do, and this is my I don't know if this is sneaky or whatever, I'll wait till Friday evening, just after work closes in Seattle, right? So everyone on the Excel campus has gone home in theory. And then I'll post an idea out on excel.uservoice.com. And then I'll go to my social media. I'll go to Twitter and YouTube and try and convince people to vote for my idea. And my goal is that by Monday morning, when the people at Microsoft show up to work again, that I could have generated 100 votes over the weekend, right? And I've done that a few times, and then it's not just me going to the Excel team saying, I think this is important. I can now go to the Excel team just as a reporter and saying, oh my gosh, did you see what happened on excel.uservoice.com this weekend? This idea came in and it instantly got 100 votes, right? And then that, it's not just me saying it, it's 100 people saying it. So that's one way that anyone now can get their idea to the Excel team. And lots of times, I don't know if it's every other month or once a quarter, they have a day just dedicated to squashing those ideas that can be done quickly, right? So people on the Excel team can pick their idea and try and get it through and then make it into the product. Okay, so now your question is, what are the things that drive me crazy in Excel? And this is one that they're never going to fix. I understand they'll never fix it, but it annoys me on the macro recorder for the VBA. If you record a VBA macro, that relative references is not turned on by default. That really, if that was turned on, then more people who recorded their first macro would have success and that macro would work again. But it's too late now. That's been in for 30 years, and chaos would ensue if they turn that off. But that was one I always complained about. I was a big fan of turning off compact layout in pivot tables.
Pivot tables, yeah.
That came along in Excel 2007, and they put all of the fields in column A. I said to the guy who did that, I said, no one's going to like this. This is, you're violating all of these rules. And, he was too close to the idea. He loved the idea. But luckily he left the Excel team. But it still took me a few years to convince them that they should give us what eventually became pivot table defaults, where you can say all future pivot tables are going to start in tabular layout and always repeat the item labels along the left-hand side and, those things. So I'm really glad that one got in. I have another really small issue to me, and these are for the people that have been creating pivot tables since Excel 2003 or earlier. In the pivot table field list, the little icons next to rows and columns, to me, they seem to be backwards. And I think that they should reverse those. But every time I say that, I get people arguing that they think that it's right. So it's not clear cut.
Yeah.
It's just, as I'm trying to teach people about pivot tables, it'd be nice if that icon showed where the data was going to go instead of whatever it shows right now. And I'm sure that I have others that just, so we have a function that came along in 2019 called text join. Yeah. It lets you join multiple texts together. The one that we really need, and I think it would be so easy, it's one line of VBA, is we need text split, right? So someone sends you data that has, all of our names separated by commas in a single cell. It'd be so nice to be able to say, this is the delimiter, split that data. Yeah. And that functions in Excel. It's literally a one-line UDF.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why they haven't given us that. That one, that's another one that just seems so easy. If we could just break in to the Excel building there on the Microsoft campus, I think in like 30 minutes we could get in there and add that. But I'm sure it's more complicated because, for me, Excel means the Excel running in Windows and maybe Excel running on a Mac. But for the Excel team, they have to support everything. They have to support Excel on the iPhone, Excel on the Android, Excel online, and so their point is like, we don't just have to change the code base in one place. We have to do it here and here and here and here and here. And that annoys me because, it's like the only one that really matters to me is the one that I use all the time. Just fix that one. Don't worry about the other, right? I'm sorry for those people who are using Android or, it's like, come on, it's a phone. How much Excel are you really going to use? And we certainly have features like Power Query. Power Query is only in Windows versions of Excel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So text split. I guess my long answer to your question is, what annoys me is I want a text split function in Excel. Let's.
Okay, so just put it up on user votes.
It's already there. And it has a lot of votes. Yeah. Yeah. Sure, Victor. Yeah.
Charles, you can come on.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope I'm being heard.
Hey, Charles. Yeah, you sound great.
So it's wonderful talking to you, Bill, this afternoon, and I just want to use the opportunity to thank you for a book you wrote some time ago, about 280 something questions and answers in Excel. It was very helpful to me.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Very, very helpful to me.
Right.
It made me what I am in Excel.
Oh,
so
that's great to hear. That's great to hear.
Let me go to my question. Recently, I've been seeing a post on using Jupyter Notes, Python and Jupyter Notes in Excel as a substitute for VBA. In your opinion, having been in the VBA world, is Jupyter Notes / Python a threat to VBA?
That is a great question. And, I don't know the answer because to me, Python is very, very hard to make the jump. And I even went out one day and I found a book on Python that was designed for people who know Excel, right? So it's, Excel, here's a book that'll teach you Python. And I couldn't get through it. Like I was 2 chapters in and it all just seemed over my head, right? So I know that the people who are good at Python, like I've met people, college students who are learning Python, and I'm like, oh, tell me about Python. What can you do with Python? And it sounds amazing what they can do. But as an Excel guy who just simply wants to do a pivot table, or I can do VLOOKUP to join tables together or whatever, the whole notion of Python just seems so hard for me. So I would love to find a book that just is designed for people that understand Excel and want to make that jump to Python. And the other one you said, Jupyter Note? Jupyter, what was the other piece of that? Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
The other was Jupyter Note, because the Jupyter Note, it just helps you to write Python scripts.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, that's what it does. So they are saying that, okay, if you've got Jupyter Notes, you can in a way connect it with your Excel. Instead of writing VBA, you now write Python and then achieve what you can achieve with VBA.
Yeah, okay, that's good. I'll have to check that out. I do agree. So if you take a report that I used to create with VBA, lots of times now I can do 95% of that with Power Query. And so I find that instead of using VBA as my first tool, I'm doing a lot of things in Power Query now. And maybe then at the end, I'll use VBA to upload the results somewhere or something.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. Mm.
And it's funny,
very much.
So many people don't realize that Power Query is there, because it was introduced between versions. And I'm surprised if, like before COVID, when I could go out and do a live session, let's say there were 100 people in my session and they all used Excel. They're all Excel 40 hours a week people. 90% of those people have never heard of Power Query. They have no idea that it's hiding back there on the data tab. And I think that was just Microsoft. Microsoft did a really bad job of introducing that feature, because it was an add-in at first and for 2010 and 2013. And then when they put it in 2016, it's so funny. If you look at the data tab, the get external data in Excel 2013 and the get external data or Power Query, get and transform in 2016, when you look at those side by side, you can see the differences if they're side by side, but no one got to see them side by side. This one disappeared, now this one's here. And if you're not paying attention, you just think, oh, well, that was what we always had. You don't realize that the ability to refresh the data and do all your steps again is there. Yeah, so I think that's one that there's a huge opportunity if we could get more people to be aware of Power Query.
Makes sense. Thanks very much. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, so at this juncture, I want to ask you, are there any exciting new features in Excel that maybe you want to show us?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess the big question, and the thing we didn't test is, can I show my screen or not? Is that?
Yeah, yes, you can.
I can open. So it says open share tray, desktop window. Let's see. How about that? Can you see my Excel?
It's coming up. It's showing that coming up kind of sign. It's not yet up.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just start to talk about this while we're waiting for it to come up. There are two new functions that came out just recently, and of course that means you have to be in Office 365 and you have to be in what they're calling the insider channel. The people that are trying, it's basically a beta channel. And the two functions, the first one is let, L-E-T. And then the second one is this function called Lambda. And the functions that I used to write in VBA to do some sort of a user-defined function, the problem with VBA is it's great for me because I'm running in Windows and even someone on a Mac. But then if I run into someone who's using Excel Online, there's no VBA in Excel Online, and so the whole thing breaks. And what they've given us now is the ability to build our own functions right in Excel, but not using VBA. It's a new function called Lambda, L-A-M-B-D-A, which is a mathematical term. And when I heard that name, I didn't like the name at all because I didn't think that anyone would ever understand what it's doing. It turns out There's a famous mathematician named Alan Turing. Alan Turing, you might have heard of, him. At least I've heard of him somewhere along the way. Well, his professor, the person when Alan Turing was a student, was a guy named Alonzo Church, and he invented something called Lambda Calculus, and this was back in the 1900s. He died in 1995, so probably around 1930 or 1940. He wrote the paper about this Lambda Calculus, and so they named the function after this concept that Alonzo Church created. Right, so now I have, respect that these two mathematicians created this concept, and so they've given it what I'm going to call a stupid name, a not meaningful name, but I guess I'll accept that because, for respect for those two guys who sort of created this idea. And so, like here's an example of a Lambda function. And what you initially do is you pass it variables. So I'm going to have a variable that's called from, like from what city, and then another variable called to another city.
I think still the screen is not yet showing.
That's horrible. Okay.
Maybe
I'll wait here. Let me try this. Share. That. Share. And then back here. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's great. All right. So you see here in D9, I have the text of this Lambda function, and there's two variables: from the city and to. So from this place to this place, and then a lot of calculations that happen from there. All right. And this is something that clearly no one would ever remember this. I had to go look it up on the internet, and you would like to be able to encapsulate this, to be able to use this again, in other workbooks or in other worksheets. And so rather than try and write this in VBA, you just write it all right here in the formula bar, and you could use this to test it. But in reality, these new functions don't get stored here in the cell. They actually get stored in, of all places, the name manager. Right, so here's my function called distance, and it's stored in the name manager. So the Lambda function, I'm going from a city to a city, and then all of the calculation. Right, so now I've created a brand new function called distance, and using this new data type feature that they have, that's new in Office 365. All right, so I'm here in Merritt Island, Florida. All right, so now I have a from city and a to city. I'm going to ask for equal distance of Lagos to Merritt Island, and this is going to be in miles. So if you're used to metric, it's going to be different. I mean, look at that, 5,649 miles. That function, not part of Excel, but now I can generate that using this brand new Lambda function, and these are relatively new, maybe a month old, but I've seen a lot of people blogging about these and coming up with some really interesting ones, especially where the Lambda function can actually do a loop. It can loop through various items. And so that to me is really exciting because now we can create our own functions. Things that aren't in Excel, like the split function, we could create a split function. But I'm still waiting for the Excel team to give us the split function. But anything that you need to create, you could create. So here, let me just come back and show this. This is Alan Turing, the one mathematician, and his professor Alonzo Church is the guy that invented this Lambda Calculus. And so when you hear that name, Lambda, and you're like, what does that mean? It's all based on this very complicated math that was created back in the 1930s, and so. That's the one really exciting thing. And I only have a few examples. I did one video on YouTube, and I'm updating one of my books this month, and I'll have to include a few more examples there on Lambda functions. But I really think that those are going to come along and change. Especially those functions that you have to use at work in your industry that no one else has to care about. Those are the functions that are never going to make it into Excel, like the engineering functions, or whatever you do at work. You probably have some calculation that's unique to your company that you're constantly using. And no number of votes at excel.uservoice.com will ever get it in, but now you can create that function and put it in the name manager and share it with others. I think it's gonna be great.
So another question that we have planned for you is, for someone starting out right now, so say I'm just new into this space, and now I'm sure compared to maybe when you started, now there's a whole lot of many options that we get distracted. Charles asked me about one other tool, and I see that every year there are always newer tools coming up, and people getting a bit confused about, okay, is it okay to just learn one tool, or do I have to start learning multiple tools? So you, with your experience also, over the years, and also your kind of unique perspective into what really businesses need and what the corporate space is, for someone starting out right now, what would you advise someone starting out in this business data analysis space, doing things for companies? What should they learn? How should they go about being relevant?
Yeah, so the most important thing, you can read as many books as you want, but if you don't try and use those functions at work, every week, they're not going to stick, right? Like I remember, and it's funny, I'm a VLOOKUP fan. I love VLOOKUP, and I get a lot of people who prefer index and match, right? And they're like, why don't you use index and match? And it's like, because I wasn't using it frequently enough to remember it, right? And I understand index and match is better than VLOOKUP, but I understood VLOOKUP because I used it every day. And also, like I have books, there's one book that has my favorite 60 Excel keyboard shortcuts. Don't try and learn all 60, just each week, choose one new one and start using that keyboard shortcut as often as you can. And then once it becomes second nature, then next week, try and pick up another keyboard shortcut. But you have to just keep using it over and over and over until it becomes second nature. Like sometimes Mike Girvin, I know Mike Girvin has a great YouTube channel, and Mike explains things really well. And when Mike and I would get together in Seattle and record a few episodes together, it was great just to watch Mike actually work and have Mike watch me work. And I use the keyboard shortcuts a lot, the control arrow and control shift arrow to select data. And Mike would be like, how are you doing that? And it's just like, well, that's how I select data all the time. I never reach for the mouse. It's just practice. And then anytime that you find that you are spending hours doing something, that's the point where you want to go see if there's a faster, easier, better way to do it. Go out to the MrExcel message board or Stack Overflow or any of those places and just say, hey, here's my problem. I have to go from this data to this data. My current method of solving it takes me hours. Is there something better? Right? And people might be able to point you to, oh yeah, you should look at pivot tables, or you should look at Power Query, or you should look at Python. Who knows? They'll tell you what you don't even know that you don't know. But find the things that you're spending a few hours on. Those are the ones that really have a chance to make a difference. There was one of my favorite stories. Oh, and I forget her name. Natalie. Her name is Natalie. This wonderful lady, Natalie, worked at a company in Australia, and there was a day where her manager needed some crazy report they couldn't get out of the system, right? And Natalie went and spent like an hour, but figured out how to create that report. But every time that the manager needed the report, Natalie had to spend an hour to get it done. And then that report, that manager took Natalie's report and showed it to a few of his other department heads, the people that and they're like, oh, well, wait, that's a great report. Can we get that report? And poor Natalie, who was smart enough to figure out how to spend an hour to do this, now found that like once a month she was running these reports. It was taking her 20 hours to create all these reports for the different departments. And that's one where I'm doing this every month. It's taking a significant chunk of the week. Is there a way that we can automate this? Even if we can just automate 80% of it, and then I can, do the other part at the end. You know, that makes a huge difference. Another story, you know, I love these stories. So there's a company where I used to live. There was a company half an hour away, and I went there to meet with them. So I'm meeting with this guy in the office, and outside the office is, you know, a young woman who's working there, working on a report in Excel, right? And so, you know, that it's just interesting to see someone working in Excel. And I said to her, I said, you know, hey, every time I come here, you're working on that same report. She said, yeah, I hate this report, she says. You know, she's getting data every day, and she's spending 2 hours a day cleaning up that data. And I had her show me what she was doing, and I said, well, wait a second. Have you seen these tools? And I showed her a Power Query, and basically, you know, in 15 minutes, we made it that those 2 hours would just disappear. Like she could do it in a minute. And I thought that was, you know, I thought that was great. But then the next week I go back, I say, well, hey, you know, you're saving 2 hours a day now. You know, you must just be sitting around with your feet up. It's like, oh, no. They came up with more things for me to do. Like there's always something that'll fill that time. But hopefully it's 2 hours of something more fun than the mundane things she was doing. You know, so just look for those things that are just sucking time every day or every week or every month, and try and find some way to automate those. And you'll always, you know, something else will pop up, but that's good. I mean, the very first company I worked for, I love this guy. He drove everyone crazy, but the president of the company, he says, I challenge all of you to find a way to make your job go away. Like if you can find some way to be more efficient and take a 40-hour week job and make it be an hour, he says, I guarantee I will not fire you. I'll find another job for you here. You can, you know, find someone else's, 40 hours and make their job more efficient. So that was great that we had that culture where you would never be fired for finding a way to be faster. So.
Wow.
Hey, let's do this. I see Patrick put a link to the book out at Amazon, Learn Excel, that old book, 277 Excel Mystery Solved. I'm gonna have to go look for it, but somewhere I gave that book away, and there's a link out there where you can download that book for free, right? So no one should go buy that book at Amazon, because I have a link where that book's available. And what I'll do, Michael, I'll get it to you, and if you could pass it on to anyone watching, so you can all check that book out. You can download the PDF. It's out there somewhere. I don't have the link at my fingertips, but I'll find it today. Okay,
that's really kind of you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so anybody has a question, you know, I have decided to let this be as interactive as possible. Anybody else has a question for MrExcel? Or you want me to be the one asking all the questions? I have a lot of questions, but it's better we get to reality, we get different people. So if you have questions, okay, let me check that box. Seems coming there. Okay. So people are saying thanks for the book. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Okay, so Paulo is asking a question, you know, for when a formula bar has, let me see. Okay, maybe he's still typing the question. It looks incomplete. Or do you want to unmute and ask him? It seems the thing you were typing didn't complete.
Well, I can already, so Paulo, the formula bar in Power BI allows comments and numbered lines and multiple lines. And when the Lambda functions were introduced, people really said that we need a better formula editor in Excel, either in the name manager or in the formula bar, some way to add comments and the whole bit. So I think that Microsoft is aware of that, and it'll just be interesting to see how long it takes them to get us something that will come along, right? So they're definitely aware of it. The problem is that it's going to take, you know, it's not going to be ready next week. They're not going to come up with some solution next week, because they wanted to get the let and the Lambda functions out for people to try. Remember, they're not rolled out to everybody yet. Mm-hmm. So to them, this is all just a great experiment still. And they don't need to have the other tools that go along with it, you know, for another year or something like that. It frustrates me sometimes that Microsoft has what I call a long view, right? They'll if something's going to be ready in 5 years, they won't wait 5 years. They'll put out version 1 now, and it will drive us crazy. It'll just drive us crazy that it doesn't do what it needs to do. But then second year, they'll add some more of that in, and the third year, and then sooner or later, 5 years go by, and it all is working great. And you're like, oh, but that was so painful for that year 1. But I get it, by putting it out there in year 1 and it only does half of what it's supposed to do, well, people can comment and say, this doesn't make sense, or it'd be better if it would do this, or, and like a great example of that is the new XLOOKUP function, XLOOKUP. Joe McDade on the calculation team at Microsoft, he thought a lot about XLOOKUP, and he made it do a lot of things that VLOOKUP was bad at. But then the function came out, and someone on my YouTube channel, a fellow from Scotland, he said, why didn't they incorporate the if NA functionality in there? And I sent a note to Joe. I said, Joe, boy, this is a great idea. And before XLOOKUP came out, they took that idea and they put it in the function, right? So, I kind of get their whole idea of it may not be completely done, but let's get it out there and let lots of people try it, and see if there's a way to improve it. Yeah, so it drives me crazy sometimes that it's not fully done. I kind of understand their strategy, I guess.
All right.
And in the long run, it's just 5 years seems like a long time, right? But you know what? 5 years goes by, right? So
thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Bill.
Yep.
So someone is asking, I don't know which one. So, okay, let me read Collision. So he's saying, in what areas do you think VBA, beats Power Query?
Well, it beats it in that there's millions of spreadsheets out there already using VBA that are working perfectly, and so for all of those, everybody who's using Excel and using VBA, and you have your processes at work that are continue to work in VBA, there's no reason to rewrite those, right? We're just going to keep using those forever. So that means the VBA will be around for a long, long time. Probably I'm going to say another 20 years. They'll have to support VBA to support all those millions and millions of functions that are out there being automated by VBA today. So it just the sheer amount of code that's already in VBA, that'll continue in VBA. I think it's the new processes that we have to automate that I think people will tend to lean towards Power Query first, or try and get most of it done in Power Query and then use VBA for the edges. So we have to, when we're done, we have to upload it to a server, via FTP or something like that, or send an email out to 40 people when it's done. And those things can be done in VBA. So I think VBA certainly is going to be around forever because of all the installed VBA that's out there, and still has a role, for the edges, on the edges of Power Query. And as far as creating user forms, custom user forms, and having validation on those user forms, that's something that Power Query is not going to be able to do, right? So there's still a lot of things that you would use VBA as your first choice. But for me, almost all the time, it was exactly what Power Query was doing. I was getting bad data from our corporate system, taking that bad data and making it into something else. So for me, 90% of the things I did in VBA were replaced by Power Query. So.
Okay. So another question by Kelechi, one of our very strong community members. So he's asking about the Lambda function. From the explanation you gave, the whole Turing, and also some things he's heard about it. So he says some people say it makes Excel Turing complete, which I kind of don't want to agree. But he says, does that make Excel less important than before now? Does Lambda?
No, I don't think it does. I think there will be times where we were going to use VBA to create a user-defined function, and now it might be easier to create a Lambda function. But the other huge problem that we all have is if you're creating things for other people to use, even if you're on Office 365 or Microsoft 365, the people in your company might not be on Microsoft 365. So the UDF in VBA is going to go work, all the way back to Excel 2003 easily. Whereas if you write a Lambda function, then you have to hope that everyone is on Microsoft 365, and that means everyone. I don't know if you have the same problem in your company, but we would have 300 people in the building, right? And even if the company said, oh, everyone's going on Microsoft 365, or, an example, upgrading to the new version of Excel, this was years ago when I worked there, there are some holdouts, people who don't go along, right? And you'll have these little corners, like someone down in the marketing department has some weird reason why they have to use an old version of Excel because there's a 32-bit driver that doesn't work in 64-bit Excel or whatever, right? And so they come up, they just hate change. They've been around for too long. I hate to say it, they're probably too old, and they convince the IT department that they're special and they can't have Microsoft 365, right? So now all of a sudden it works for everybody except for this guy and that woman down there because they have some reason they can't switch. So while Lambda and the latest and greatest is good if everyone's on Microsoft 365, that doesn't happen in the real world. You have people, the holdouts, who have some weird reason that they're stuck back on some old version. And now, they're going to say, oh, well, yeah. They're actually going to, depending on how long they've been there and how established they are in the company, they're going to make you look bad. And it's like, oh yeah, he wrote that new, newfangled thing and it doesn't work. Don't trust that because they want to stick with their old methods, right? The great thing about a UDF, if everyone's running Windows, it's just going to work. All right. So, yeah.
There's something I've always wondered, how, and this is a great chance for me to ask. So what's your typical day like? You seem to do a lot. Sometimes I think maybe you have more than 48 hours a day, with the in between the MrExcel, I think almost daily videos you create, and then the guest sessions you have, and the books you write. Even just the books alone makes it look like there are 3 of you, kind of.
That's funny. My secret is I start working before anyone else wakes up. So I love from 4 in the morning. Typically here the workday goes from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I love those 4 hours from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. I get more done before anyone shows up to work, because if you get to work before anyone's working, there's no phone calls, there's no emails that have to be answered, there's no co-workers coming in and saying, hey, can you help me with this? And so I love those first 4 hours of the day. When I was doing daily videos, I had the ability, I could wake up, start to record a video at 5 and have it edited and posted by 6. And I know there's others out there. Well, Mike Gervin was saying to me, he's like, oh, I spend so much time editing the video. And I know Excel on Fire, Oz de Soleil, if you've ever seen Oz's videos, just amazing production with the flames and fire and sound effects, and they look beautiful. But I don't have time. I don't take the time to do that. My goal is, if it's a 5-minute video, I want to get it up there in an hour and then get on with my day. And I'm very aware that the people who are newer and are spending more time on production values, they're getting a lot of views. They're getting a lot of people subscribing to their channel. And, that's great. People, might appreciate those production values. For me, I just want to get the information out there, right? It doesn't have to be fancy and look amazing. And that's just my style. Maybe that's not the future. And then book writing is a special thing. You just have to shut the world off in order to write a book, especially those big books for Microsoft Press. They used to be by Q or Pearson. You have to say to everyone, I'm just going to disappear for 120 days. And I just won't be here, which causes a lot of pain. And people are like, you have to be here because you have to answer questions or you have to handle this or handle that. But the only way to get a big book written is just to not do anything else, or set a budget. Like you have to finish 16 pages a day, and I track that in Excel, of course, right? So here's day 1 through 120, 16 pages a day, and make sure that you're ahead. And maybe don't answer any emails until you've written the 16 pages for the day. Otherwise, you just end up so far behind, and then it becomes really, really stressful when you get behind. I hate getting behind. I've learned my lesson now, and so I just, when it's time to write a book, you just have to close your eyes and do nothing else other than the book to get that done. So.
Anybody has any question before I go to my next one? Let me see how many more minutes we have. Oh, how time flies.
Yeah, Charles made a comment about Oz. Must have a movie studio. It's so great. Oz sent me a 1-hour video that shows some of his tips and tricks, and I watched that video. I made all kinds of notes, and I tried to do some of the things that Oz does, like with the transitions and things like that. But again, it's intimidating because he knows all these tricks, right? And you watch in 1 hour, you see 40 new tricks, and if you don't start using them right away, then you forget. So I love Oz. I love his, he's a good guy, and his hatred of bad data and people who give you bad data, is legendary. So good guy.
Well, one of the last questions from me will be, so then this will be the last. I think someone, so Cherian is asking now, can we not see you? I think your camera went off.
Oh no, that's horrible. What happened? Okay, here we are.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. The computer went to sleep and I must have turned me off. All right, I'm back. Hello.
So now you see him. Let me make you spotlight so that way.
Hi.
Hey, all right.
Okay. All right. So over the your many years in Excel, what one experience stands out for you? What would you say is one experience that you can say really has no equal over the many years you?
Oh, that's great. I've gotten to meet some interesting people through Excel, but I think the thing that I love the most is when I would travel to a city and we would have an Excel seminar, and you maybe have 80 accountants show up, right, who spend the day with me. And I tell everybody when I start, I tell everyone that I guarantee that at some point this morning, someone in this room is going to see me do something in Excel, and you're going to say, wait a second, I have a faster, better, easier way to do this, right? And I say, don't be shy. Feel free to show me up. I have a prize. I always have a prize for the people who give me new ideas. And so if there's a seminar going, there have been a few times, you don't just get one idea, but you get many ideas. And I always, there's a record that the most new ideas in one day was 8 in Oklahoma City, 15 years ago. And if you start getting so many new ideas that you're going to get close to that record, then you start to talk about the record. It's like, oh, you have a chance of breaking the record. And there have been some ideas that people, suggest that, you maybe heard of before, but every once in a while you'll get some brand new idea that is just so amazing, and you're like, oh, this is going to be great. This is going to end up in the next book because everyone needs to know about this idea. And there's a guy named Dan who was in a seminar in Philadelphia 18 years ago, who showed me a way to use autofilter in a pivot table. That was just like unlike anything I'd ever seen. And it lets you do things with pivot tables that you can't do. And I loved that trick from Dan. And I always show that trick in every seminar, and it's funny, Dan and I, it was a half-day seminar. So we spent 3.5 hours together, and all I know is Dan. I don't have his last name. I kind of have a mental picture of what he looked like 18 years ago. I don't know his story of how he learned that function, but Dan and I crossed paths for 3 hours, and he gave me this amazing trick in Excel that I've now shared with thousands of people. And I only had one other person know that trick. And it was so weird. I was in Cincinnati. So this is 8 hours away from Philadelphia. And there's a guy there who really knows Excel really well. He's winning the prize over, like he single-handedly was going to give me 8 new tips. And we got to this thing and he knew it. Like even before I could say it, he knew it. And that guy, his name was also Dan. And I said, oh my gosh, this is Dan. I found Dan. I found the same guy. But he swears it wasn't him. He swears he wasn't in Philadelphia. But I got a picture of me and the second Dan, just in case, and it's for me, it's exciting to learn something new in Excel. There's 750 million people using Excel. You wander around, you talk to people, you use Excel a lot, and someone has this cool idea that you've never seen anyone else do. And it's like, that's amazing, right? And let's get this out on YouTube. Let's share this. Let's pass this along so everyone else can benefit from that. So
that's really great. I think I've been on one of the sessions where you also shared the trick.
Chandu, right?
Right.
And again, that was me telling that story, and Chandu said, "Oh, we should make a video, about that trick." But there's all kinds of tricks like that.
Great. So I think time is up. I don't know if are there any things you maybe want to tell the house? And then for the entire audience, Bill has not been to Nigeria before, so I was telling him maybe one of these. Right. I don't know if this year doesn't look like that kind of a year, but maybe. Yeah.
Once we start traveling again, right? Once we're able to travel, and Mrs. Excel will want to come along, so we'll come and we'll spend some time and see the sites and talk about Excel.
Okay, our organizing team. Tunde, I hope you're all hearing, so maybe we can start working towards something like that.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot. Greatly appreciate your time. I don't know if you have anything you want to say.
I appreciate the chance to talk to everyone. I appreciate everyone who signed in to say hello today. It seems like the hour went by amazingly fast. So we'll have to do it again sometime, later in the year, and maybe we can cover some more. Well, we'll wait till the next great Excel thing comes out, and I'll come back and talk about that maybe. So
great, awesome. So thank you very, very much, and to everybody who's joined today, thanks a lot, and have a nice rest of the Sunday. And to our special guest, Bill, we greatly appreciate your coming, and we wish you a great week ahead. I can see Charles clapping. I'm also clapping, and it's been a very enjoyable session with you.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the invitation.
Bye.
All right, bye.